See, I don't know what to make of this. This is primarily a knockoff company that knocks off everything that DX9 and Iron Factory does, maybe dabbling in a little bit of what Unique Toys is doing, but the aim of the game for them is to replace all of those figures. I'm not talking about maybe getting an alternative, I'm talking about straight up replacement. I'm not a fan of those kinds of knockoffs. I like certain kinds of knockoffs, I've reviewed a couple on the channel that are perfectly fine, but that first review probably wouldn't happen in today's environment, because I don't like a figure that is supposed to be an exact copy of another. But they don't do an exact copy of another, they make them slightly larger so that they define their own scale. So if you want all the figures to scale together, you have to get an entirely MechFansToys lineup. You can't supplement them with official figures because they'll be too small. One thing, that's not Legends anymore, it's too small for it, why not just have them Legends sized? And two, you're trying to make everyone only buy knockoffs and not buy any official ones. Now, I am not one to talk, I'm still waiting on Weijiang to make their upscaled MPM Prime, but for some reason, MechFansToys just irks me. And please, I am not judging anyone who purchased those knockoffs, I have no right to do so. Regardless, they do make their own original designs in the form of Springer and their Omega Supreme that was leader-sized. But are these designs good on their own? Because, well, they're a company mainly known for doing knockoffs. Can they try their hand at original stuff? So Springer right here is a constant tale of almost getting there and not quite hitting it right. Primarily this is a knockoff company, so they're not used to making their own designs, and I get that. But the design they present us as their first outing is a bit disappointing. Also, I should mention he does come with a Diaclone mech, which I will not be showing in this review. One, because I can't find it, and two, I'm not here to review Diaclone mechs, I'm here to review Legends class Transformers. Although, does this really count as Legends class Transformer? Because this is definitely not in the Legends scale, this is definitely in the MechFansToys scale, which is designed to completely replace all the other Legends stuff previously established. Whereas Ironhide could sort of fit into either, this one is firmly in that larger scale. He's not so big that I find that disappointing, but it is its own thing that exists, I guess. I mean, let's give him a quick look next to the recently reviewed Hardhead, and you'll see that the scales just do not match up. And I'm not a scale nut by any means, but you can tell they want to kind of say, no, don't buy these ones, buy our knockoffs instead. And please, do not misunderstand me. This is purely preference. I am not hating on knockoffs in general. It is simply that I do not like the MechFansToys scale. It is not that it is bad by any stretch of the imagination. It is just personal preference. What I can review is the toys themselves, and this toy is a bit lackluster. I think the worst mode would be the car because there's just no locking mechanisms in here. The way they tell you to transform it is a bit confusing and the arms don't really have anywhere to go. This is the kind of configuration I came up with the guns on the side, just so that at least they're contained. But the sword has nowhere to go at all, it just kind of sits around there. It's pretty disappointing, because you got the tab there to fit the sword, but there's nowhere under the robot mode to do so. Also, this is a pretty messy underside, bit disappointing. It doesn't even roll very well, there's a lot of clearance issues, and it's very messy, especially towards the back here with these helicopter parts. You could say it's a Legends figure, it should have some concessions, and yes, the Iron Factory Blitzwing didn't turn out that great either, but at the same time, they could at least try harder. I mean, this is 2018, they should put in at least a bit more effort. Helicopter mode is quite simple. You remove the guns, you bring these around, the wrist swivel, you gotta make sure the wrist is swivel beforehand actually. They are very tight to swivel. You gotta make sure these are continuously locked in. Then the helicopter bits fold in, like so, into the back. Then these actually have dedicated tabs on the side, which is quite nice. They say in the instructions that there are dedicated tabs in the car mode, but they're not. They're not dedicated at all. They kind of just sit there, which is why I came up with my own configuration. And then finally, this splits around. I don't really like this sword, because they do that old third-party thing where it just kind of sticks together, and it's very wibbly indeed. I think the Fans Project one did that. Not to mention, this is very thin plastic. I'm very concerned I'm going to break this. But anyway, it pegs in with a rather weird peg. It's like, boom, in there. It's solid at least, and this is a much better helicopter mode, I will give them that. I feel like the car mode was an afterthought. Usually the helicopter mode is the afterthought. But overall, it is a very, very nice helicopter mode in comparison. I'm hoping that Iron Factory will do a much better Springer, but overall, it's alright. It's very bulky towards the back, but it's definitely a Springer helicopter mode. One thing I wish they could have done is changed up the windshield from the car mode to the helicopter mode, but this is a very cheap budget figure that's supposed to work with other knockoffs that are supposed to be cheap budget figures, so what they're doing here is fine. I don't even mind that the wrists are visible here, because they've got some paint to kind of cover it up. It's not terrible. It's not terrible at all. Transforming into robot mode is actually quite okay. You don't actually have to take these off. These can remain mounted under the wrists. These fold out a little bit, which allow you to move them around and do all sorts of crazy articulation things. But whatever, you come down here, you unpeg these, and bring them around here. Then you bring down the legs, they are on single hinges. Then you untab them again, which allows you to bring the foot around, retab, untab, bring the feet around, retab. And he stands quite solidly with some pretty awesome feet, which is something I can't say for a lot of Legends figures. Arms fold down and around, you've got lovely ball joints and hinges that act as double hinge. You bring the head up, and you bring the torso over, and the head can come up fully, but you don't put it up fully, it just kind of goes there. And I actually like this robot mode. It's hard to get Springer right. Oh, of course, you can get the sword in the hand. Yeah, this isn't bad. This isn't bad. It's not great, especially with the alt modes, but it's not terrible either. He could use a lot more paint, and I feel like the IDW design is way more dynamic and way cooler. But, I don't know, he's okay. He's actually a similar size to Iron Factory Overlord, which means that they can fight and duke it out quite well. But, you know, of course, if you don't like these on the arms, you can just take them off. I've gotten so used to them being on and self-contained that I don't really mind it. But overall, it's got okay paint, decent colour breakup. The sword doesn't look too bad once it's in his hand, even if it does split towards the end. It's alright. Articulation is passable, you get the ball jointed head. Hinges here that also have a swivel. Ball joints here, also a hinge, so you can get a nice double hinged elbow from any direction you choose. Slight waist swivel that's kind of not great thanks to the backpack, but you got a nice waist design here at least. Ball joints that work mostly unhindered, nice thigh swivel. See, this guy has a thigh swivel. Why doesn't Tailgate have a thigh swivel? Why doesn't Hardhead have a thigh swivel? And a lovely knee bend thanks to transformation. Also, you got a ball joint and a hinge here, which works as a great ankle tilt, which means you can just give him in any pose you like whatsoever. He is rather poseable for his size. I get that they can do more at this larger size class, but I feel it would have worked better even if it was a bit smaller. This guy is bordering on what a Legends class figure is. He's almost deluxe sized, almost, but not quite. Actually, I want to try something. Let's see how well he goes next to... let's just see for a second there. Yeah, that actually doesn't look too bad. I guess he scales well with X2 Toys' Optimus Prime? But that's not Legend scale. That's just my personal preference, I guess. He's fine. Springer's a little bare bones. There's nothing terrible about him, but there's not a lot fantastic about him either. I know I've been saying that a lot in this lineup, but it's just a thing that applies to a lot of Legends figures nowadays. As the game shifts forward and forward, you gotta do more, you gotta stay on the ball. And Springer, yes, he's probably the best triple changer in the Legends scale on the market right now. Actually, he would be if Unique Toys didn't do their thing. I still think the Unique Toys Horrorcons are slightly better. But he's a fun figure. I would definitely recommend him, if he wasn't so expensive and hard to find. Yeah, they inflated the price with an extra Diaclone mech, which I haven't reviewed in this episode because who the hell cares at this point. Not to mention he is very hard to find in most places. Most places don't stock him, and is sold out across eBay. I had to find one seller that took ages to send, and I was very concerned it wouldn't show up on time. He comes with a bunch of accessories you'll never use, a mech suit that nobody cares about at this scale, but in the end, he's fine. I'd still wait for Iron Factory to do an IDW Springer because, let's face it, the Voyager IDW Springer from Thrilling 30 was bloody fantastic, and if Iron Factory does that again, they'll be rolling in cash. But until then, tomorrow's video is... Actually, no. I'm not going to tell you that. You'll just have to find out for yourself. But for any Legends collector, you already know exactly what it is, because what else could it be in this day and age? It's the one. It's the only. Almost had me there. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to do it. Christmas Day, he's a-coming. He's a-coming.